Too much solder in the joint? Not enough solder in the joint. If that's the trouble you're facing right now, then this video is for you. Today, I'm going to explain to you what soldering actually is from a chemical and physical standpoint so you can better understand why you've used too much solder or you haven't used enough solder. Imagine this is your butt joint. You've held it up to the light, you see there's no gaps, and you're ready to solder. So you flex up here on top, you place your solder pal in there, and you start heating. As you start heating, the molecules inside the metal start moving around. While it's moving around, it's creating space. When the temperature of the solder reaches its flow point, that solder will flow by capillary action into the gaps in between the molecules that are moving around. And when you remove the heat, the vibration stops and those atoms stop moving, and now they've created a new bond between the flux, not the flux, but the solder that you put on top and the silver or copper or whatever metal you're using. And that's now created kind of like a zipper effect. When you pull a zipper up, it closes. When you pull a zipper down, it opens. So imagine that that piece of solder, once it becomes liquefied and you see the flash, it's flowing through the joint and filling up the gaps between the molecules that are moving while you're heating it. As soon as you take that flame away, those molecules stop moving and that joint becomes solid. It's acted like a zipper. So the molecules of the solder have interacted with the molecules of your metal and have become joined. That's why they call it a joint. It's now a solid piece of metal. In some cases, that joint itself, or that alloy that you've now created with the solder and the silver, is now a new piece of metal with different atoms, and it's now solid. So let's go back to the ring that I soldered in the Why Won't My Solder Flow video. I'll link that up here in the corner so you can go back and view that. And let's look at the flooded joint. You can see I had too much solder and it left this nice little heavy bump right here in the middle of my solder joint, and it also flowed to the left and to the right of the joint. So now I have a bunch of solder here to clean up. And the reason for that is because of the size of the solder palins that I chose to use. I used very large self-cut solder pallions is the word. I used 2 of them when I probably really only needed to use 1, but at the time I was more interested in showing you how to heat the metal to get the solder to flow. So by using 2 of these very large pieces of solder, I had way too much alloy metal to use to zip up that zipper in my butt joint. My butt joint was so tight, it was really hard for me to find where I needed to place my solder and my flux. So that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. You want your joint so tight that it's hard to see before you even solder it, because then that means you have to use less solder to actually close it, which ultimately results in less cleanup work as well. So in time, as you're soldering and you're practicing, you'll learn how many pieces of solder to use and what size solder to use. And the general rule of thumb is use less than you think you need. So in this last case for this ring, because I used these really large pieces of solder, I used 2 pieces and that was way too much. I don't know how well you can see. These solder pieces are probably about 2 to 3 millimeters a piece in a 20 gauge because I cut them using my solder pliers. So it's a fairly large piece of solder. I'll show you another example. This is pre-cut solder that I bought, and it's much smaller. The piece is probably 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. And depending on which type of solder you use, you're going to have to use your judgment and your intuition to tell you how much is too much, because there is no hard and fast rule for how much solder you should use. Really, the thing that determines how much solder is necessary is how closely you've created the butt joint. So in time and with practice, you'll figure that out, and you'll decide that based on the thickness of the metal, the length of the joint, and how good that you're getting with heating the entire ring first and then finally getting the solder to flow through the joint. So like I said before, there are no hard and fast rules, but it will be determined essentially by the thickness of your metal and the length of your joint. Worst case scenario, if you don't have enough, you just pickle the piece, reflux it, and add another piece of solder. If you have too much, then you'll be in this situation where now I need to take my file, clean off all that excess solder, and be able to actually polish this down to a point where you can't see the joint. So as you can see, soldering is not as easy as it may seem when you're watching videos of other people making things. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, and there's a ton of practice that happens in order to get really good at soldering pieces. Two things you need to keep in mind. Your solder joint really does need to be tight fitting, because solder doesn't fill the gaps. It only creates a space in which atoms can bond to create that zipper effect that I mentioned earlier. The second thing is you're going to want to decide, and this is going to take practice as well, based on the size of the solder that you have. If you have those teeny tiny little pieces of solder, you're probably going to use more than you think you should. And if you use the big pieces that you self-cut, you're probably going to use less than you think you should. And that is based on the thickness of your metal and the length of your joint. So if you have very thin metal and a very small length, I would say use the tiniest piece of solder you could possibly cut if you're manually cutting it, or if you're using pre-cut, one piece is probably enough. So don't beat yourself up. It's going to take practice, it's going to take intuition and your gut feeling on how much solder you think you should use. And like I said earlier, the worst case scenario, if you don't have enough solder, pickle the piece, clean it up real good, reflux it, and add another piece of solder to it. And that should fix your problem. If there's too much, then you'll know next time, for this size joint and this thickness of metal, I probably should have used only half. You're going to have to practice. This is another reason why I think it's really important for you to keep records of what you've done, so that you at least can go back and reference to what you did last time, what worked well, what didn't work well, and have an idea of where you're going to go in the future. Because making jewelry and doing hard soldering with silver or gold or copper is not a simple task. It's something that you're going to have to practice a lot, and it's something that over time you'll develop an intuition or a natural ability to decide how much solder you need. So hopefully this video was helpful for you, and next week we're going to cover a different topic in soldering, so I look forward to seeing you. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye!